Started. Welcome to the Microsoft Outlook Working with Calendars webinar. This is a presentation of the New York State and CSEA Partnership for Education and Training. My name is Eddie Encarnacion, and I'll be your host for the webinar. Our facilitator today will be Eleonora Morel.
Hello.
At this point, I just want to point out that everyone has been muted to keep background noise to a minimum. If you have questions, you can click on the Raise Hand button. The Raise Hand button can be found at the bottom of the Participants panel. It's an icon of a hand in the air. I'd like you to try raising your hand now. Please click on the Raise Hand button. Excellent. Notice how you can see a hand go up next to your name in the Participants panel. Now let's go ahead and put your hands down by clicking on the Raise Hand button again. Great. You can also type any questions or comments you have in the chat box. The chat box is located on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Make sure that everyone is selected in the Send To area. And then when you're done typing your thoughts, go ahead and press Enter. As I mentioned previously, today's webinar is sponsored by the New York State and CSEA Partnership for Education and Training, or as many people refer to it, the Partnership. Some of you may be wondering, what is the Partnership exactly? Well, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, the Partnership is an organization that administers education and training programs for CSEA represented employees through labor management cooperation. It is funded through negotiated agreements between New York State and CSEA. The partnership offers in-person classroom training, online learning, educational advisement services, grants, tuition benefits, labor management services, and other education and training programs, including the webinar you are attending today. In essence, the partnership is a joint labor management organization whose mission is to promote career mobility, improve job skills, support workplace safety and health, and promote effective labor management relations. You can learn more about us on our website or by calling us directly. I'll provide our contact information again at the end of today's webinar. Now that we all know a little bit more about the partnership, let's get started with the Microsoft Outlook Working with Calendars webinar. I'd like to turn the presentation over to your instructor, Eleonora Morel.
And thank you, Eddie. Thank you for joining us today. Good afternoon. My name is Eleonora Morel, and I've been using Outlook for 20 plus years to manage not only my email, but my calendar. So I use it daily. Over the next hour, we'll explore how to use the calendar feature in Outlook. Many people are familiar with Outlook because they use it for sending and receiving email. Outlook also has a great calendar tool which you can use to organize your time and plan ahead. You can schedule your own activities as well as invite others to a meeting. You can also schedule all-day events. Additionally, you can share your calendar with others and view multiple calendars at once. We'll also discuss some best practices for managing your calendar along the way. So here's a question for you. Have you ever been late or missed an appointment completely and it ended up causing a problem for you?
I'd like you to notice that I've opened the Slido panel on the right-hand side of the screen. Take your mouse and click on the option A for yes or B for no that best describes your experience. When you are done, please click on Send. And for those of you who may not have access to Slido due to security issues at your facility, you can always type in either A or B in the chat. Okay, Eleonora, I'll give it a few more seconds. Let a couple more votes come in.
So A is for yes and B is for no, right? If they were putting it in the
Correct.
chat.
A is for yes and B is for no.
Or you could, just like some people are putting, a Y and an N.
All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll pause that. And it looks like the majority of the people have spoken and they have said A, yes, they have missed an appointment.
Okay, great. Gee, that's a tough one. So, hopefully, we've all probably been in this situation at one time or another, and sometimes we can't avoid missing an appointment due to weather conditions or a traffic accident. But what about those times we could have avoided missing a meeting but just forgot or lost track of time? Today we're going to talk about how Outlook can help us avoid those missed appointments. As you can see, we'll be discussing several Outlook calendar features today. Let's start by talking about how we can utilize Outlook's calendar feature to schedule appointments. I'm curious, what method have you used in the past to keep track of your appointments? For example, some people put sticky notes near their workspace. What would you please share one of your methods you use to keep track of appointments in the chat box? I always think of that the Geico commercial with the woman who puts the sticky notes on her phone to pick up her husband. That's not good.
Please type in the method you have used to keep track of your appointments in the chat box. The chat box is at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Don't forget to press enter when you are done. And I'm curious to hear from those folks who voted yes, they have missed appointments. What methods do they use? Okay, so let's see. Let's take a look at the chat. I have here reminders, sticky notes, calendar feature on my cell phone or email, calendar, Google Calendar. I see a lot of calendar, sticky notes,
Sticky notes and
notes and
reminders, Google
reminders.
Calendar.
All great responses, everyone. Really appreciate you participating.
Memory, but it doesn't always work. Yeah, right,
Yeah.
Jason? Yeah. Uh, yeah, if you weren't invited via the email or calendar, yeah, that happens. So thanks. Yep, thanks for sharing your responses. And sticky notes are good, but it might not be the best way to do it. So sticky notes, appointment cards, and scraps of paper to keep track of your appointments, not necessarily a best practice. They can easily get lost or be overlooked when it's time for the appointment. It's better to track your appointments on an actual calendar, whether it's paper or digital. So some of you said you have both, so that's fine. Having said that, Outlook's calendar is a great tool. It allows us to schedule and keep track of our appointments in one place, and also can be set up to send us reminders when it's time to go to the appointment. It's just like having a personal assistant to help us keep track of where we need to be and when, reminding us when it's time to head out the door. The first thing you need to do to get started is go to Outlook's calendar view. You can do this by clicking on the calendar icon at the bottom of the screen, which we have a screenshot here, but in the newer version of Outlook, it's actually on the left-hand side of the screen, and the icon is still the same. It just looks like the little calendar icon, but it may be on the left side of the screen as opposed to the bottom of the screen. So we've highlighted it in red here, and depending on how your Outlook is set up, it may appear like the left side or the right side. So sometimes if it's at the bottom, it'll say the word calendar, but now for the most part, if it's on the left, it's just the calendar icon. And how many of you have used Outlook's calendar feature before?
Please click on the raise hand button if you have used the calendar in Outlook previously. The raise hand button is at the bottom of the screen. Oh, we have quite a few hands up. Let's see. Yeah, I also have in the chat a couple folks.
Yeah. Yep, put things on and manage mine as well as 5 others. So yep, so that's a great way to use the calendar. Okay, so yeah, lots and lots of people have used the calendar in Outlook. Good, that means you know where the icon lives. So thanks for sharing. Great, good to see people have focused on that. Okay. Once you are in the calendar view, one way to create an appointment is to click on the new appointment button on the ribbon. Once you click on that, the appointment details dialog box will pop up. This box allows us to give our appointments a title, a start and end time. Note that by default, Outlook schedules the start and end time on the half hour, But if you'd like a different time, you can type it in directly into the box, such as 9:15. While we're talking about creating an appointment, a new appointment, I'd like to mention the Show As drop-down from the Options group on the ribbon. The default is to show that you are just busy at this time. However, you can also choose out of office. If you're simply busy, a person could find you to ask you a question. So if I was teaching a class, somebody could technically walk in my classroom and say, hey, Elle, we need you to come out. But if you're out of office, truly out of office, that's not possible. So there's no point going to look for you, okay? Because this can be helpful to people you work with. Specifying your true show as status is a best practice. Remember when we discussed how Outlook could remind you about your upcoming appointments? That's done with the Reminder feature. The Reminder dropdown is found on the ribbon. The default reminder is 15 minutes before the appointment, but you can change it to a different amount of time by clicking on that number. Additional warning time might allow you to factor in things like heavy traffic and time spent locating a parking spot. Never. Once we set all of our appointment options, click the Save and Close button to add the appointment to your calendar. By default, Outlook shows you your calendar in month view, but you can also view your appointments for just the day by clicking on the Day button on the ribbon. The day view is also shown on the screen. Here's a question for you. Let's say that Susan would like to view all of her appointments for the week at once. Where on the screen would she click to do that? Each letter corresponds with a letter on the image. Which one is closest to the button she needs to click on?
I'd like you to notice that I've opened the Slido panel again, which can be found on the right-hand side of the screen. Take your mouse and click on the option A, B, or C that you feel is the best answer. And when you are done, please click on Send. Okay, and we're starting to get some votes coming in. Let me just take a look at the chat real quick. Okay, I have an A and a B in the chat. And if I go back to Slido, we have about 20 votes. And it looks like the majority, 90%, are saying A, Eleonora.
Yep, I see that. Yep, option A is the correct answer. In the Arrange group on the ribbon, you can select day, work week, month, or schedule view. Week would show her appointments from Monday to Sunday, whereas work week would only show Monday to Friday. Before we move on, does anyone have any questions about calendar views or anything else?
If you do have a question, please go ahead and type it in the chat. Also, we will have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So if you have some questions you want to save for the end, you can do so as well. All right, I'll give people a few more seconds just in case they're typing in a question. And Eleonora, I don't see any questions at this time.
So, all right, we'll move on. So as far as Outlook is concerned, an appointment is something that would be only on your calendar. So an appointment is only for you. A meeting, on the other hand, involves several people and their calendars. So let's talk about that next. Meetings help us to collaborate with others and share ideas. When we get together, we can benefit from others' expertise. Outlook gives us a way to schedule a meeting date on each attendee's calendar and then receive responses from them as to whether they can attend or not. Let's take a quick poll. Which of the methods in this list is the most common way that people invite you to a meeting at work?
I went ahead and I opened the Slido panel on the right-hand side of the screen. Take your mouse and click on the option or options A, B, C, D, or E that you feel is the best answer. When you are done, go ahead and click on Send. All right, let me just take a quick peek in the chat. I have
It's interesting. In Slido, we're getting zeros on in person, and in the chat, I see some in person, but in the Slido, it looks like nobody's doing it in person or by phone.
yeah, I think those days are done. We
Yeah,
have so it looks like the majority have spoken, and we have 62%. It's a toss-up between D by Outlook meeting request or C by email
email
message.
message. Right, there you go. Okay, thanks. Thanks for answering that. Okay. As more and as more people in the workforce become familiar with Outlook's calendar, it becomes more likely that you will receive meeting requests that way. So via email request or an Outlook calendar request or Outlook meeting request. In a moment, we'll talk about how to create and respond to meeting requests in Outlook. Let's say your boss just sent you a meeting invitation in Outlook about an upcoming staff meeting. You'll get a meeting request in your inbox, but that meeting will also appear on your calendar, but it will appear faded in a faded gray color to indicate that you haven't accepted it yet. You can see the difference between an accepted meeting on the right and the unaccepted meeting on the left, which we've highlighted. Let's look at the different ways you can respond to that meeting request next. When you view a meeting request, you'll see several ways to respond. If you click accept, the meeting will stop being gray and will be accepted. If you'd like to include a note for your boss, you can also use the drop-down arrow under accept and choose edit the response before sending. A new email window will open, allowing you to type your responses in and then click send to send it. Likewise, if you'd like to attend but aren't sure if you'll be able to, you may want to click on the tentative button. If the meeting day and time just won't work with your schedule, you can click on decline. By the way, you can also click propose a new time button if you'd like to suggest a date or time that works better for you. And this is only if the person allows that. It is good practice to always respond to the meetings you are invited to. That way the organizer, which may be you in the future, will know how many people are going to attend their meeting. Let me ask you, how many people here have had to organize a meeting at work?
Once again, I've opened the Slido panel, which can be found on the right-hand side of the screen. Take your mouse and click on the option A for yes or B for no that describes your experience. Then when you're done, please click on send. Okay, let me take a quick peek in the chat. Okay, nothing in the chat, and go back to the Slido poll.
64, 60, 64, 62%.
All right, and it looks like the majority, 62% are saying A, yes, that they have organized meetings.
Okay, great. So I'm curious, and this time you can do it with a raise hand, if you've had to set up a lot of meetings as part of your job.
Yeah, go ahead and raise your hand if part of your job is to organize a lot of meetings.
I got
Oh, we have a few hands up.
a few, yep.
I'll put my hand up as well because
Oh,
I'm constantly scheduling meetings.
all right, there we go.
All right, let's go ahead and put those hands down.
All right,
Thank you.
great. All right, thanks. Regardless of your experience, I'm going to walk you through the steps of setting up a meeting in Outlook. Even if you don't need to organize meetings now, you may be asked to do it in the future. So knowing how the meeting scheduling feature works in Outlook will give you an advantage. Let's say that your boss is going to be out of town and she has asked you to schedule a check-in meeting about a project you and your coworker have been handling on the day she gets back into town. You should set up a meeting in Outlook to do that. A meeting is scheduled much the same way as an appointment. You would start by going to the calendar view, which you remember is on the navigation bar at the bottom left or on the left-hand side of your computer, depending on the version of Outlook. And then you would go to the Home tab and click on New Meeting on the calendar view in the ribbon. The meeting details screen is pretty similar to the one we used for scheduling an appointment. On the meeting screen, though, we can see something new, the required and optional boxes. These boxes are used the same way you would use the to and the CC lines in an email message in Outlook. You would type the names of all the people you want to invite to your meeting there. If there are people that are not required to come, but you want them to have the option, you can list them under optional. It's always helpful to give your meeting invitation a helpful title so that people have an idea of what will be discussed at the meeting. And just like appointments, you'll also specify a location, a date and time for the meeting, and when you're done, click send. So here's another question for you. What do you think is the biggest challenge when it comes to scheduling meetings? Please type your answers in the chat box.
Please share with us your ideas about the biggest challenge we face when scheduling meetings. Again, the chat box can be found at the bottom right corner of the screen. All right, and we have some responses. Conflicts, having everyone attend, everyone's schedule, finding a time that works for all required to attend, correct email, that's a good one, matching up free time, working with other people's schedules. These are all great and common problems and challenges that we face. So thank you everyone for sharing.
Yeah, and it's time consuming, to go back and forth and back and forth. So yeah, I think probably agree that the most challenging part of setting up a meeting is figuring out when everyone is free to meet. And this can be especially hard with busy people. And we're all busy. As I said, I think the toughest part of setting up the meeting is finding when people are free to get together. And I'm happy to say that Outlook can help us with this. When you fill out the details of the meeting, you will be on the Meeting tab. However, if you click on the Scheduling Assistant tab, a screen will appear showing the meeting attendees on the left, and to the right of their names, you will see a table which shows when they are available. Dark bars appear if a person is booked at that time. As we can see from the key at the bottom of the screen, the bars will be dark blue if the Show As setting is busy, and the bar will be a fuchsia color if the status was selected as out of office. And if Outlook can't find the calendar information for the person, it will show up with diagonal lines or hash marks. The long light blue area that goes from top to bottom of the screen is the time that you are hoping to have your meeting. Notice if you look down that light blue area, how none of the people we have information for are shown as being booked at that time with a bar. One person is busy from 1:30 to 2, and another has a meeting from 9:30 to 10, but they aren't busy from 3:30 to 4. You can invite some more attendees to your meeting by clicking on the Add Attendees button from the ribbon. When you do this, the New York State Global Address Book will open. Search for new attendees by typing their last name in. You may need to type a comma and their first name too to find the right person. Then highlight their name and click on the Required, Optional, or Resources button and click OK when you're finished adding people. Note that resources such as room and equipment can be added to the invitation by clicking on the Add Rooms button. If your organization has calendars for these resources, and so not organizations have that, like we don't have that. Let's say that I was hoping to meet from 1:30 to 2. However, I can see from the scheduling assistant that my invitees are not available then. So you can notice the colored bars. Instead of scrolling to see what time they might be available, I can click the Options button at the bottom of the screen and then click on Auto Pick. Outlook will find the next few times all 10 attendees will be available. It's a pretty cool feature. Just like with scheduling appointments, you can also set a reminder to alert you before the meeting. Setting reminders for yourself is another best practice for managing your calendar. It only takes a moment, but can help you avoid missing meetings or being late. When you set up a meeting, you can also attach a meeting agenda or other documents for your attendees. To do that, click on the Insert tab, then click on the Attach File button. I'm curious, do you think it would be helpful to know ahead of time who will be attending your meeting and hasn't responded yet?
If you think it would be helpful to know ahead of time who will be attending your meeting, please click on the Raise Hand button at the bottom of the screen. I will go ahead and I'll put my hand up.
Okay.
And
Thanks, Eddie.
I am not the only one. I see a few hands up in the air as well.
Yeah, I see that. Oh, yeah, I see them. All right. Actually, I'd also like you to type in the chat box why you think knowing how many people would be there will be helpful.
Please let us know why you think this information would be helpful by typing in the chat box. Oh, that's a huge one right there from Audrey. Cancellations.
Yep.
To be better prepared.
I always like to know how many people are coming so I know how many cookies to order and how many I'm going to have left over for myself. You know, 10 people are coming. I need to order at least 15 cookies. Got to at least have 5. Yes, of course. Is the room big enough? Prepared. If you have handouts or something, you're going to need to know. But how many copies, right? Exactly. Yep, yep, yep. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Eddie, nobody put cookies down, I tell you.
It's all right. I'll take the extras.
Okay, all right. So yes, it's important to be able to track your meeting responses. For one thing, we want to make sure that all of the key players will be in attendance. And we also want to make sure that we have enough handouts, cookies, and available seats. Outlook comes with a handy tool for doing just that. It will tell us how many responded so far and whether or not they will be attending. It also lets us know who hasn't responded. Outlook's tracking feature allows us to keep tabs on which attendees have responded and whether or not they can attend. If an attendee cannot attend, you can allow that person to suggest a better time by choosing Allow New Time Proposals option on the Response Options dropdown. This can be especially important if the individual is a person who absolutely needs to attend. The Allow New Time Proposal option can save a lot of times by avoiding back and forth emails that happen when a key player can't make it and you're trying to find out when that person can meet. In the response to your meeting invitation, they can suggest a new time so you know when they are available. This time savings is what makes checking Allow New Proposals option a best practice. If you are the meeting organizer, only if you're the meeting organizer, you can keep tabs on which individuals have responded to your meeting request and which haven't. To do this, click the Tracking tab. When you do this, a screen will appear showing you how many people have marked their responses accept, tentative, or decline. Those who haven't responded will be shown as, well, the word none right next to them. And so you'll see it. You'll see the word none next to them. So you'll see that. Yes, it is a very nice feature. Okay. As we've talked about meetings, we've mentioned several best practices along the way. I'd like you to think for a moment and then type one of those meeting best practices in the chat box.
Take a moment to think, and then type in one meeting best practice in the chat box at the bottom right corner of the screen.
Okay.
What are some best practices for scheduling meetings in Outlook?
Did mention them. They were in passing. So propose a new time, set reminders.
Okay, someone put double check all information, set a reminder.
Yep. Scheduling assistant.
That's a go one, scheduling assistant.
Yep. And
Review their calendar first.
yep. And if you have some that you're thinking of, you could always throw them in there. That's fine.
Great. Thank you everyone for sharing.
Thank you so much for sharing. Sometimes, yep. Well, there we go. Great job. So some of the things that aren't best practices are sticky notes. Remember, we were talking about that as not being a good idea, but respond to meeting requests. That's another good idea. But does anybody have any questions about meetings?
If you do have any questions, go ahead and type it in the chat. And again, all of this information is very good information. I myself have learned a couple of new tricks. I think we all get so used to our go-to maneuver in certain softwares, but I definitely learned a couple of new things to do moving forward. Let's see. So we have a question here. Where can I find a recorded version of this session? So you will be able to find the recorded version of this webinar in Slims. I usually upload them within a week. So you can just go ahead within a week and search for Microsoft Outlook working with calendars, and it should pop up.
So we have the question there, Eddie, on how to schedule the Teams and WebEx meetings. So I think that's a little beyond at least WebEx for me. I mean, obviously I do know how to do it, but I can tell you, so Julie, in the newest version of Outlook, in the latest version of Outlook, as soon as you click on scheduling a meeting, as soon as you schedule a meeting, it automatically assumes it's going to be a Teams meeting. And so when I go to Outlook and schedule a meeting, it automatically puts the Teams information in there. And there's a button on the ribbon of the meeting that says host online. And if I click that, turn it off, it removes the Teams information. But if I press it back on, it'll put the Teams information in there. If you are in Teams, you can simply click on to the calendar in Teams, and when you're there, upper right-hand corner, there's an option for scheduling a meeting as opposed to Meet Now. There's an option to schedule the meeting. There's a new meeting button, and when you do that, anything you schedule in Teams will appear on your Outlook calendar, and vice versa. If you schedule a meeting that's hosted in Teams in Outlook, it will appear in your Teams calendar. The two are synchronized, but so that's how you schedule a meeting in Teams. In Teams itself, upper right-hand corner, new meeting. In Outlook, create the meeting. The new version of Outlook will automatically make it a Teams meeting. So hopefully that answers that question. As far as WebEx is concerned, I would say it's a little bit beyond the scope because we're working with Microsoft Office here, right?
Yes, and we can show at the end of today's webinar, I can share my screen and we can go over how to actually set it up in Outlook, because for WebEx, when going through Outlook, it's the same exact thing. There's going to be an option for Teams, making it a Teams meeting, and there's going to be an option for making it a WebEx meeting.
Okay, there you go, Eddie. Thank you. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So we can get back there. Okay, well, let me go. So sometimes there are events that last all day instead of just at a set hour of the day, and we can schedule those in Outlook as all-day events. So let's say that our building needs some electrical work done. There might be a repair person walking through the building on that day, and it may get noisy in the work area. It might be helpful to create an appointment in your calendar for that day and make it an all-day event. That way, when you're looking for a date to hold a meeting in the future, you can quickly see that this probably isn't a great day to bring people together. So you're just creating an appointment for yourself to remind yourself all day, repairman working. So people also use this feature when they'll be away for the entire day for any reason. Okay, it's time to see what you know. I would like you to tell us where you would click to make this an all-day event.
And before I put the Slido poll up, Julie, if you look at the screenshots, you'll see the option here to make it a Teams meeting or to make it a WebEx meeting. Okay. Right, but now I went ahead and I've launched the Slido poll. Go ahead with your mouse and click on the option A, B, or C that you feel is the best answer. When you are done, go ahead and click on send.
I can see. I think we got 100%, at least in
Yes.
Slido.
Yes, so far, yeah, I have 18 votes and they're all saying C.
All right, yep.
Same thing with the chat. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to close the Slido poll and we're going to say, everyone is saying C.
C. Yes. So simply clicking in the checkbox for all day event, which was option C, is all that is needed to schedule the event for the entire calendar day. If you ever need to change it, all you need to do is click the box again to uncheck it. It works like a toggle. So great job, everyone. As we saw, scheduling an all-day meeting or appointment is simple. You would begin by scheduling a meeting and then clicking on the all-day event checkbox. You can see that the checkbox on the screen is in the red box. But before we move on, does anyone have a question about using this feature or anything else we've covered so far?
Go ahead. If you have any questions, type them in the chat.
Eh,
Okay, I'm going to give it a few more seconds. And I think it's safe to say we can move on.
Okay, great. Right. So far, we've been discussing setting up meetings and appointments and responding to them. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about the benefits of sharing our calendar with others and being able to look at more than one calendar at a time. As I mentioned earlier, meetings help us to collaborate with others. In Outlook, we can also share our calendars we can also share our calendars as a way of letting our coworkers know where we are. Can you think of any other benefits of sharing your calendar with someone in your workplace?
Please type in one way people could benefit from sharing their calendars in the chat box. Very, very useful tool. I use it all the time. We all use it here at the partnership.
Yep, sharing calendars or you can.
Okay, so let's see. So they know where you are, what you're doing to collaborate meetings. I'll throw one in there to keep us all in sync. I share with all the supervisors so I can direct calls accordingly.
Information, see when
You.
somebody's busy and free. Yep. Everyone can know what you're doing in case they need you. Inform you. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of good responses out there.
Thank you everyone for sharing.
Yep. One way to share a calendar is to grant that person permission to view your calendar. To do this, click on Share Calendar on the Home tab. When you do this, a drop-down menu will appear to select the calendar you'd like to share if you have multiple. Once you select the calendar you'd like to share, a dialog box will appear. In the top part of the box, you can see the name of the users who have access to your calendar. To give someone permission to view your calendar, click the Add button and then select a user from the list. Once you've done that, you can highlight a person's name and assign them permission to view various levels of details, from just busy to titles and location to full details, or edit, meaning they can add or remove things from your calendar. To view someone else's calendar, go to the Home tab and then click on Open Calendar button. From the sublist, click on the command for Open Shared Calendar. You can also search for a calendar to add to your list from the address book. Once you've opened a shared calendar, the name of that person appears at the bottom left. And to view the calendar, just click the checkbox to the next to the person's name. Notice how you can see both your calendars side by side when you do this. This is a great way to see when you're both free. You can also check the box next to several people's calendars to see all of them side by side. That can get a little crazy. And you can actually open anybody's calendar and view whether they're busy or not. You can't see the details unless they have shared that with you. But at this point, I'd like to put together all the features we've learned about today. Let's say Larry, an office manager, is new to Outlook. They need to set up a special all-day team meeting with their four-person team. What Outlook calendar should Larry use to set up that meeting? Please type one or more features you'd recommend in the chat box. If you're having a problem doing this, think about the calendar best practices we discussed before.
Please type in the name of one or more features that Larry should use in the chat box. Again, he needs to set up a special all-day team meeting with his 4-person team. Okay,
Scheduling assistant. Yeah.
yeah, right out the gate, scheduling assistant. Contacts, he can use his team calendar.
If they have one, yep. But scheduling assistant, yeah, probably the scheduling assistant is going to be really helpful.
Hmm.
Yep. Checking on the availability of his team members. Scheduling assistant.
Yeah, scheduling assistant is my go-to move. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you everyone for sharing.
Okay. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing part of your day with us. Before we move on to the question and answer period, I'd like to turn this webinar over to our host, turn it over to Eddie, who will talk to you more about upcoming webinars and the course evaluation.
First off, I just want to say thank you, Eleonora, for a great webinar.
No
You're
problem.
always very knowledgeable, and I know our members greatly appreciate it. But before we wrap up, I want to mention that when you close the webinar window, our brief online survey will pop up in a new window. I just want to thank you in advance for your feedback because we do review it all and use it to improve our webinars. So please, we hope that you take the time to fill out the webinar evaluation after you leave. Also, I would like to mention if you scan the QR code on the screen, it will take you to our skills